Hello, everyone. Back for another episode of REKT Vision. We have a new co-host today. We have Stats, Sam, NFT Stats. He's gone by a bunch of different names over the years. Originally, I started following you for all your amazing charts around crypto and NFTs. Came into crypto, I think NFT around the same time I did. And then you've gone on to do various different things in crypto, most recently working at Meme, which is one of the more prominent NFT projects out there. But ex-TradFi, ex-Uber as well, know a lot of things about a lot of things. So I thought you'd be a great co-host to kind of come on and chat through the markets. Cheers for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. What you just said reminded me, I worked at Goldman Sachs during the financial crisis. Uber when the Me Too movement was hot and we were public enemy number one. Proof when it went to zero. And Memeland gets its share of hate. So I think I have this Velcro to bad public energy, but
that's not you. That's not you. You're a really nice guy. I'm surprised that
I try to be a nice guy. I try to be a nice guy, but that it was just something that occurred to me as you were talking.
You get put in places of hate, clearly. But we are. I also thought that obviously there's been this trend towards NFTs too, and I know that's primarily your focus still. It feels like, at least in terms of your content. So we can definitely get onto that. But I think just before we go live into stuff, just wanted to say for Real Vision, we have they're running a sale at the moment for their Connect memberships. This is their entry level memberships, gives you access to the monthly AMA they do with OSF, lots of other content. You can head over to realvision.com/ready-set-connect. Now let's get into the markets. It's one of the few Fridays in months that we've had a really strong Friday. Normally, you open markets on a Friday and it feels like we're being smashed lower and CT is freaking out. This time, suddenly, it feels like everyone was underexposed. A slightly dovish Jackson Hole speech by Powell was the main impetus for this rally. We had been trending all the way down to around 112K on Bitcoin. ETH touched just above 4K. Solana, I think, was like 178, 179. Now, ETH's close to all-time high. Bitcoin's back up to 117K nearly. Sol's nearly back up to 200. It feels as though a bit of a short squeeze going on in the markets. Did you what were you thinking going into this Stats?
So I mean, I kind of just hold positions. I'm not someone who, I've got some Bitcoin, I've got some Solana, I've got some ETH, and I have a lot of exposure to meme coin. So I don't really play kind of like the day in, day out. But one thing that is always clear, this was just from being in the stock markets for 20 years, is that interest rates drive everything. Like, we get excited about one thing or another, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to like, where are we in an interest rate cycle? Where are we in like the monetary policy? And and when it feels like we're getting looser, the markets rip, and I feel like the big picture is that in a year, Trump is going to have whoever he wants running the Fed, and like we're just going to have a dovish kind of 2 to 3 year period coming up. I mean, at his core, Trump is a real estate guy. All he wants is low interest rates. And I feel like that's the longer term outlook. But Powell always was a little bit of an obstacle there, and for him to come out and be a little bit more dovish than expected, obviously, is something the markets really like a lot.
Yeah, and it was a pretty short speech, but he basically just said, "Look, I think it's now time to cut rates." I think interest rates. We'd had some slight Raoul's view as well about markets just being driven by liquidity and interest rates, and kind of ignore the noise.
I was speaking a little bit more to kind of risk assets in general. Obviously, crypto has alpha. There are specific things within the crypto market as a whole that are kind of agnostic to interest rates. And then if you get down to altcoins, obviously, you can have. I always find altcoins a weird bucket because it's basically like everything but like the big ones, and like the dispersion there is enormous. So it's very hard I find it very hard to think about that as an asset class in general. So I'd say like what I was saying about interest rates obviously is going to have some truth to it, but like Pepe coin and Fartcoin and those are kind of the bigger ones, but whatever your bag is probably has a lot of sensitivities outside of interest rates. But when you get these nice beta squeezes, that's always awesome.
Yeah. And it does feel like ETH again has been the main. I mean, I don't even know if you class ETH as an altcoin. I guess it's a major, but ETH is on a tear, up 10%. since just today. It really bounced hard off that 4,050, 4,070 level and just continued to push on higher. Looks all-time high is what, about
4,800.
yeah, about 7% from here, I think, something like that. Like it feels like we can get there, maybe even this weekend. There were some calls at the time, ETH's gonna go below 4K, and you bought in at the wrong time, and this has really shown that the strength is here. What's your view on?
I think 4,800 is the all-time high. I think it got to 4,800 in the last bull market at on Binance for a minute, So I think we still got a little bit of ways for that, but yeah, I guess that's 7-8%.
It feels sustained. This trend. I'd be super surprised if we don't manage to break through all-time high in the next month. You've always been a bit of an ETH guy. Do you think now is the time? Do you believe in the 16K ETH thesis, or are you just a bit more like this is going to be the main winner for the next few months?
I'm a bit more skeptical of kind of like the pie in the sky types of things. I think that, I always gauge a little bit what are kind of my traditional finance friends asking me about. And I think when Bitcoin's at all-time highs and making and so much higher than its highs from last cycle, ETH over time becomes the next place people want to turn. So ETH still is not past its last cycle high. I think people feel a little more comfortable buying. People who know nothing feel a little more comfortable buying this as like a bit of a laggard play, and it still is a laggard. I mean, sort of, if you go back a couple years relative to Bitcoin. So I think it just kind of gets that attention, and then on top of that, you have this just absolutely insane treasury company kind of bid that does feel like it's losing a little bit of the wind in its sails. Not gonna lie, like I think that really drove a lot of the market. Something like I saw some stat that Lubin and Lee together bought like 1.5% of supply in 1 month or something like numbers that took them 1 month to get to, that took Saylor 3 years to get to. So the velocity of buying that was happening under there, I think was just enormous. I have a hard time tracing any of these moves to like a fundamental narrative, which makes it hard to throw a fundamental valuation on. I think it is just more about the overall crypto cycle, about how much does Bitcoin go up and how much does ETH follow. I think when people start talking about, stablecoin adoption is going, that's going to drive gas, and that's going to drive, I think you're moving into a narrative that actually has never really reflected what prices do, which is trying to draw it too close to fundamentals when it's really about FOMO flows and kind of relative performance versus other players.
And you've always been a bit of more of a vocal person against MicroStrategy. This is now the trade that's kind of driving ETH.
Yeah,
we have stats from obviously Bitmine and Sharplink being the two main ones, but I just saw now they own 3.5% of the ETH supply now, so pretty wild, or 3.4% of the ETH supply, and I'm sure they've been buying today as well. What's your view on them? Like they on an MNAV perspective, earlier today, it looked like Bitmine was trading at 1.2, Sharplink was trading at 1.1, and this is versus MicroStrategy around 1.5. Like, do you think this is a worry for ETH, or do you think this is just that the bid will dry up?
I think the bid will dry up. I mean, ultimately, to me, the MNAV, which is how much, if a treasury company buys $100 of ETH, is the public market paying $100 or paying $110? And when the public market is paying $110 for the $100 of ETH you bought, that's a 10% like MNAV premium. I don't understand why they exist in almost any case. I think like 100, even if Joe Lubin spends $100 on ETH, I think the market should pay $100 for that, or perhaps less, because it's harder to get liquidity than simply buying an ETF, where you can buy, if your daughter gets married, you can sell your at par value the day before the wedding, no problem, or the day before you have to submit those bills. Whereas if you're looking at these other companies, they could be trading at a discount. You might not be able to get your liquidity. Like, that's actually a less attractive asset than simply owning ETH itself. And ETH is so easy to own in the stock market that I just don't understand why these premiums exist. The logic has to be that someone like Lubin is going to find ways to make it worth more than it currently is, or maybe you could put some yield explanation for it, that you're getting yield that you're not getting via the ETF, and therefore it should trade at a premium, stuff like that. But when you start looking at a 50% premium, which is all based on like the aura of what Michael Saylor can do, like he's got this unique kind of cult following that maybe has validated that over time, but no one else has those cult followings. The fundamentals just over time don't make a lot of sense. And we saw this with GBTC and other vehicles that before ETFs traded at a huge premium to NAV, and then a year later they traded at a 40% discount to NAV. So like these things can swing wildly, and I think as you get more and more free money supply of these things, because if you can buy $100 of ETH and sell it for $120 or $110, a bunch of arbitrageurs are going to put that trade on. They're going to try to raise the money, sell it instantly, and as you get more and more, there's just too much supply. There's not enough demand to keep up, and the premiums are going to go to zero. The question is, and this is the big question, is what happens when they start trading at a discount? Does a big player eat them all up, like acquire all of them? Do the people who are managing those things at a discount say, well, I get paid fees, I get paid a salary no matter what, so let's just keep it existing? Or do they sell all their Ethereum? If you're trading at a 10% discount, you can sell all your Ethereum and immediately pay out a dividend to all your shareholders at a 10% premium, and you make people an instant 10%, which is, in my view, the most shareholder-friendly thing to do. So if that last option is the case, where these things trade at a discount, and those are the options, but yeah, it's hard to predict which one's going to happen. But to me, it doesn't feel like the rosiest overall package of outcomes.
Yeah,
I think that was a lot.
That's kind of where we're at in terms of people getting worried about these things. I think I saw today about 25% of the current DATs are already trading at a discount. So we're now already at the stage where we didn't need 5 to 10 DATs for each asset. And there are some management teams, I think, which are being deemed more friendly or better than others. And I feel like the next stage of this is probably consolidation. Like if you can buy if somebody who has their vehicle trading at 1.2 or 1.5 can buy a DAT at 0.8 or close, like maybe even somewhere in between that and NAV, then feels like that might not be the worst trade, if you know what I mean.
Why would any owner sell for a discount when you can just sell the Bitcoin and pay out at par? Like who's the seller who'll do anything other than sell at parity?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the costs of both. I don't know. I've never shut down a DAT, but I can imagine an equity for equity deal might be simpler in some ways than a route down liquidation. I don't know though, but I'm sure these are the things that will come up. Like,
yeah, I just don't know who that seller is. I mean, to your point, maybe you pay 2% of shareholder money because those are the costs to just sell all your Bitcoin and return it to shareholders. But selling your Bitcoin and paying out a dividend doesn't strike me as the most expensive of operations. And if you can do that and get people 99 cents on the dollar, why would you sell to Saylor for 90 cents on the dollar? That's just that's reckless.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe he'll have to buy it at the premium. I actually don't know. I guess there's no benefit for that either. I do just think that there will be options around this. I'm just sure, and it will come down to these sort of cost thing that we've just spoken about. But it is diminishing, and I think people, for Saylor in particular, because he has debt on his balance sheet, whereas most of the others have done it, as far as we can tell, via equity financing. There's been some that said they filed like mixed shelves, and they have mixed asset lines, I think they've called them. So you don't know if it's been debt or equity. But by and large, it does seem like the majority of this has been equity. It's less of a worry. Whereas Saylor has put in these prefs, it's like 10% interest, and then he's put in converts, which means there is now a bit of an ongoing financing cost. I think billions of dollars worth of principal of prefs is going to cost you a few $100 million a year of interest alongside. I don't think the converts have got a high interest rate. I think it's less than like 1%. I think it's like 0 point something. But it does feel like that exact structure is a little bit more risky. It adds leverage. So you could argue that if Bitcoin continues to perform very, very well, there is some leverage that would help the common stock. But it does feel like the common stock, to me, is going to continue to be the financing vehicle for everything else.
Yeah. I mean, you need to find a way he's committed to pay billions of, to pay tons of interest to all these, to STRF and STRK, like all these other vehicles. Like the reason the people are in it is they can get interest, and their recourse. I don't know if they have any recourse. I don't remember if he made them like no recourse, but
No, I think they're all unsecured. Yeah.
yeah, but either way, like you don't want. I mean, maybe he doesn't care, but I mean, the only way to, he has no operation, so ultimately he has to sell Bitcoin to fund it. I mean,
He does have some minimal operations. This is the thing. He has like an underlying business, which was enough to pay the interest, I think, on the converts. But if you are gonna, the thing about the prefs is that you don't actually have to continue to pay interest on them if things go badly, right? Pref stock is more like a you don't default if you don't pay interest on pref stock. But
you just become a straight up junk bond operator.
Right. Yeah. You just lose the faith, I think, of people if that was to happen. But I don't see any other way to pay the interest on that other than selling Bitcoin or raising new capital, right? There's no other way. He doesn't have unless he starts getting into a yield bearing crypto lending business, potentially. But with which he's kind of said, but then I haven't seen much about it.
I mean, the good thing is that there are a lot of other fundamental factors here that are making Bitcoin go higher, and like at the end of the day, this isn't the only driver of Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin continues to be strong, yeah, he can sell a little bit here and there, and like it's not going to destroy the market, and he'll pay off his interest, and like, everything will be fine. So, it's kind of like, yeah, I think that rising Bitcoin prices like kind of made all the tether problems go away that people were worried about. Like at the end of the day, the fact that this market kind of one direction over any longer period of time kind of cures all problems. But yeah, I mean, if you get a weaker period of stretch, like the NAV premium to me truly makes no sense. But yeah, I don't see Saylor as an idolized cult leader. Like I'm different from his holders.
Yeah, I think you're right. I continue to think it won't blow up. I don't think Saylor's going to blow up in any sort of way, but I just don't know if you want to own common stock of MicroStrategy. That's kind of been my view for a little bit here.
I think also as more of these other companies, which inevitably, like they don't have the allure, so there really is no reason for them to trade at a premium, given the increasing supply and the fact that it doesn't make sense in the first place.
For some of these, you can argue they create an equity. Like you can make them into a DeFi vehicle, or with smart contract L1s, I feel like with ETH, for example, you could potentially make that. And Bitcoin, you really just have to go after lending, right?
I mean, to get $100 million, like to get interest on $100 million ETF or 100 DAT is a lot harder than for me to get 15% on Wasabi. Like in a consistent, safe way that, yeah, so maybe you build in, 3% per year for ETH and kind of discount that back. But a lot of these premiums just don't make a ton of sense. Yeah, I mean, maybe some premium does because of the ability to stake. But regardless, as other ones start to blow up, I just think that's bad. That's just bad for Saylor.
Yeah. And staking ETFs as well, like that kind of ruins that argument as well to a certain extent, doesn't it? If you can just get a staking ETF.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think over time that's just bad for Saylor. It's like this allure and this whole kind of narrative in the marketplace just kind of gets chipped away at. And the fact that 25% of them are trading it below par right now, that it's been quick. Like a month ago, that wasn't happening. Like these things can move real quick.
Yeah, we know when things go wrong in crypto, it's crazy. Yeah. There was a time where, what was it, Circle was trading at like 80 cents on the dollar, USDC, and then that lasts for 24 hours. When things go wrong in crypto, they go wrong very, very quickly. Anyway, we'll bring the conversation back to your forte, let's say, which is NFTs, and which has been a big resurgence already this cycle, but I don't know where the punk floor is right now, but I'm sure it's doing okay. I think I last saw it around 220, 225K with this ETH rally. And we're now close to like 2x Bitcoin, right? That was a trade which for a long time was trading at a discount or around about the same. And it was always, what should you own? It's become very clear that owning a punk is been better than Bitcoin for the last 2 months, at least. What do you think about the rest of the NFT market? Are you bullish, or are you just bullish on kind of very specific things?
I think I'm most bullish on punks. I think I think at this point what we're seeing here is, I think with the treasury companies, there is a view that you're going to get treasury companies buying NFTs. And, I think what are the ones that they're going to buy? You have to think, or I always have thought, I always say NFTs are like wine, the older, the better, the longer it survived, the better it's going to, like the more valuable it's going to be. And I think you start looking at the stuff that just has much longer term provenance. I think so many people have been burned in the NFT space for buying like new shiny objects. And at the end of the day, the digital collectible market, I think, kind of starts to consolidate around the things that have real long-term provenance. So you have punks, you have fidenzas, you have chromie squiggles, you have, rare pepes, you have, I think that's like the first place that the money's going to go. I think pudgy penguins are starting to enter that conversation just because they've done such an incredible job entering like the public conversation, but like in a very meaningful way. And they're kind of starting to get a bit more longer term provenance. But I think that those are the types of places where these flows feel like they're being concentrated.
Am I back? Was that you?
I thought I lost you for a second, but I don't know if it was me being lost or who was lost. I'm in the mountains, so sometimes my internet goes funky.
Okay, well, I think I got what you were saying about like, yeah, it's just going to be a smaller group. I think honestly, it's quite easy to know what is going to be the things that moves in the NFT space right now. If you've been around for enough time, you kind of can, it's not shooting fish in a barrel, but you definitely know where the money's going to flow if it starts flowing in, right?
Especially because the nature of this is more like what's the most institutional grade asset. Like that's what they're trying to do here. They're not trying to like resurge Islanders or whatever, they're not trying to resurge quirkies. Quirkies seem to be doing pretty well. They're going like, what's the stuff that feels a bit more independent, not as reliant on founders? And I think they're chromie squiggles, fidenzas, rare pepes, and obviously CryptoPunks are kind of front of mind.
Yeah. But there has been a resurgence in things like Moonbirds as well. Like this whole IP play, REKT obviously has been part of that. Pengu, like, do you think that has legs as well? Like, do you think, because right now we had Kanye West launch a token this week, everyone lost money. The number of traders on chain on pretty much every single chain, but particularly Solana, is down 70-80% now. Like it's not a good period. And suddenly everyone's going like, well, maybe we'll go back and we'll trade some NFTs. What do you think about that, the business side of stuff coming back?
I think REKT obviously is just an overall ecosystem that has been around a long time. But you and OSF have been around a long time, and you're extremely present. And people, NFT buyers love active founders who are out there pounding on the ground or pounding the pavement, just making it clear that they are here and they, and that they're drawing attention. And if you look at the 3 projects right now that I say are performing, you have REKT. These aren't just the only 3, but if you look at 3 of them, Moonbirds is the obvious example because Spencer is like a new person, new hope, new dreams. Like, what the sky's the limit when you have something new. And Spencer is, on Twitter every day, kind of bull posting in like the best possible way with a little bit of mystery. Like he's doing all the right things for prices to go higher. And then, Luca is a permanent presence right now. And he's just so extremely talented at this game that we are all playing. So I think when you put that all together, and Pengu, you got people outside of crypto tweeting about it. Like it's just becoming much more of like the brand, kind of in a way that apes were in the last cycle. Like I feel like Pengu is starting to reach places outside that I don't know if that gets people we don't know buying it, but it gets people within our community saying, whoa, these guys are actually making a lot of noise. Like because there's always money in our community to go around. So I think, but that vocal founder effect is so impactful. And and also the dream factor, which is what Spencer brings, is not just a vocal founder, but a new founder. And then anything's possible. So he kind of has a little bit of that magic that a lot of the other projects had during the last cycle.
I agree. I think a lot of that stuff ended up being a bit hollow, didn't it? And then it really bites you. But do you think this time can actually be? Is there like this whole idea of, maybe this IP is valuable on the stock market. Maybe these companies can get bought. Maybe there's a bigger play here or for IP, crypto. You can do anything with crypto now. Like, is that bit of it I get the hype bit of it, what you're saying. Like people are coming in and they're saying the right things and the mystery. And it's like, I remember all of this. Like this is all the stuff from 2021. But do you actually think there's some substance to this time can be different for NFTs in that sort of stuff can happen?
I haven't quite seen that validation yet. I like still think like we're repeating old patterns more than we're seeing new things defined. Especially with NFTs. Like, I mean, one of the interesting things about Pudgy Penguins is like, the Pengu, the launch of Pengu and the launch of the future launch of Abstract did more for those NFT prices than huge deals with Walmart. Like all my kids have Pudgy Penguin stuffed animals, and my kids know what Pudgy Penguins are. They love it. And like during that like blur farming period around that Walmart stuff, Pudgy Penguins were like going back and forth between 4 and 6 ETH. Like no one cared about Walmart. But when I shouldn't say no one cared, but that's like a very slow drip build. When Pengu was announced, we were looking at like 35 ETH. Like so I haven't seen the validation yet that NFTs like sustain long-term value on a lot of on the non-hype, the non-airdrop kind of narratives. I don't think we're at a point yet in the cycle where we've seen that.
But maybe they don't sustain value in the non-crypto landscape. Maybe we will just have very valuable crypto brands here. Like Pengu feels like a very valuable crypto brand. If Pengu were to do a ton of different things related to crypto, I'm sure it would go quite well, as you just said with the Abstract, right? Like it's kind of like, okay, they can do an LT, they can do a thing, and I think that's something that we may see, that some of these brands come back and they, because of this, like you said, this relentless founders, great communication, good community, like they end up. You kind of seen this kind of with the bonk community, right? Like where they're kind of involved in everything on Solana, and they're probably much more of a crypto native brand than outside of crypto. But whatever they touch, it feels like, okay, they're allowed to do. And you kind of get that it might be a success.
Well, how do you think about this? I mean, one thing that I saw at Proof that was a huge liability to us was over time, we had the collective, Proof collective passes, we had Moonbirds, we had oddities, we had we had all the individual art pieces we dropped. We launched an entirely new project with individual artists, and eventually there was just too many assets to feed. And I think I see this at a lot of places. You have NFTs to feed, you have coins to feed, you have kind of the other product-based coins that you feel like you have to feed, and sometimes it just gets to be too much. I mean, so I know at REKT you guys have both an NFT and a coin. Like, how do you think about trying to feed everybody and making sure that doesn't become a problem?
That's a really good point. I think one of the main things that NFT companies got wrong was the proliferation of assets rather than maybe the proliferation of businesses. Like you wanted to create a new asset to define the business, and sometimes you can just create another business. Like let's go back to Bonk here. Like Bonk has one coin, and yet they've then created a launch pad. They've created a Bonk bot. They've created some things in DeFi, some other partnerships. They've only really kept the one asset. Pengu obviously has probably got another asset coming in Abstract, but it doesn't feel that. And I guess it already had the little pudgies, but I don't know if that was before Luca. I think it was right before Luca that they did the little pudgies. That's kind of what they got annoyed about, I think, in the start. Yeah. But what REKT has done is, I think, it's kind of just kept to the coin and the NFT. And for better or for worse, the coin is definitely the thing that seems the thing that's going a bit more broad in terms of its appeal, because it's been more tied to maybe the drinks business. Although obviously there's like the IP has got to play there with the NFT. But I think that there is a case there that you can get into other businesses within crypto, and not have to like dilute the number of holders or the assets. Like I think that's how I would hope Spencer's probably thinking about it too, and some of the others. Because I agree with you. When you have like 5 different floor prices, I remember DGods had this issue too, right? They've got like, oh, we've got to have a different strategy for everything. And then what ends up happening is they try and do it for a bit, and then they go, we're just going to have one asset. Yuga Labs essentially are trying to do that right now. Like they basically trying to just cut everything, go like, right, that was the wrong move. They even cut punks, which is like very valuable, because they've gone like, right, we just need to return to the one asset, and then we can do different things, I think, with it.
And
I think
and it's what I try to do at Memeland. At Memeland, I always try to figure out how can we kind of focus things on meme coin, you know, because that is an easier thing as a team for us to like communicate, you know, and then you know the NFTs have gotten token over time, and yeah, and the team really wants. Part of the issue is the NFT holders are your most loyal people. The NFT people are the ones who put your brand as their platform, who are your biggest advertisers. They're the ones who are most vocal. They're the ones whose identities are most tied to you. And even though I think fundamentally it's easier to funnel everything into the token, you also want to make sure that your biggest brand advocates, the people who put their identity on the line for you, also are treated well. So it becomes a bit of a, yeah, I think that's one of the big challenges in crypto.
That is it. That is it. That's you have to thread the needle, so to speak, between that. Like we have two assets. Sometimes the NFT does better, sometimes the coin does better. Recently the coin's done better, and like it has been slightly disappointing, I think, for some of the holders of the NFT, because it's like, oh, you know, we were the originals, and some people are just getting involved in this coin now. And you have to think, right, how can we think about things slightly different? How can we make sure that they benefit? But I don't think we would proliferate basically from here.
Yeah,
I mean, I just don't think that kind of makes sense. It would be more tying in with some of the other stuff we do. Like, obviously, I'm involved with Yeet as well, but we can think about different things to tie in on the business side rather than like the asset side. Do you think just going back to the meme coin side of stuff? I know you were never really a meme coin guy either, right? Like that whole thing passed you by, or not passed you by, but you purposely did not want to get involved in it. Are you still of that view, or do you think it's not coming back now? Like it's been a pretty horrific period here, and the Yeezy coin this week was kind of, I wouldn't say the nail in the coffin, but it definitely didn't make people happy.
I think there's a lot of mirror with NFTs, right? Like with NFTs, you started with CryptoPunks, then you got Bored Apes, and it just became clear that JPEGs could make you a ton of money. So then there became a lot more supply that followed suit, you know, and you had these huge rallies, and then kind of everyone ended up losing money in almost everything with some exceptions. And that pain from having lost money, like the engine, the adrenaline behind these rallies is people's belief that it could be the next punks, that it could be the next Bored Apes. And when that stops to be something that feels very real, just the rallies aren't as strong. And if the rallies aren't as strong, you just don't get as many buyers. More people like get out of this as quickly as you can. And that was what happened with NFTs. And I think 3 years later, we're still kind of feeling that hurt. I mean, even look at Moonbirds. Like Moonbirds has been on fire, but it's at 3.6 ETH. You know, it got up to 35 ETH, and even in the bear market of NFTs, I still remember it was at 6 ETH, and we were like, what the fuck? You know, now it's at 3.5 ETH. So the rallies just don't have the force because there's too much pain that people have felt from losing money by trying to catch these rallies. I think meme coins had the exact same trajectory. Like obviously, you had the OGs like Doge or Sheeb or other ones like that. But then we got Pepe just a couple years ago that went to $8 billion. Then you got Whiff. And then you had stuff like Bonk that completely blew up in one day. And you had this idea that if you got onto the right meme coin, you could actually make millions of dollars. And tons of supply came out. And the same thing happened with NFTs. People just started losing a ton of money. And as people started losing a ton of money, the pumps became less forceful. You had more people come in and extract. Obviously, you have stuff like Haktua, you have Kanye right now. You have more and more people who came and said they wanted to get there. It kind of reminds people a little bit of the NFT cycle. So just the overall oxygen behind these rallies is the view, I could be the next Pepe. But right now, the oxygen is, holy shit, I lost a ton of money. And then it just loses the energy because none of these assets have fundamental value outside of like real cultural takeover. And that's the other thing. Like manufactured culture is so much harder than something that happens spontaneously. So like Pepe just happened out of nowhere. Like nothing had been rallying. Then suddenly folks like, holy shit, Pepe, my Pepe bag went from 10 million, or the market went from 10 to 100. And then next thing you know, it's 6 billion. And that was just like, no one expected it because you hadn't had a meme coin rally. Like, and you get these spontaneous pumps. That's where the real energy is. And then when you get into the manufactured stage, it just has less ability to take over culture. And I think kind of all those things feel like big headwinds in the meme coin space right now.
Yeah, I think there is, it very much mimics the NFT cycle for me. I think you're very right on that. I actually think there will be a time in about a year where a lot of the projects which have sustained communities or some sort of mimetic value will actually come back. I really do think that there's been a few coins already this year, which are more like 2024 coins, which should come back. And we'll see similar sort of moves like we've just seen with REKT and Pengu and Moonbirds even. Like they'll be around then.
The fact is there's a ton of money in this space. And not only like even in bear markets, there's a lot of money in the space. And right now we're in a bull market. So people want to find things to believe in. And I think REKT has this totally new narrative of the drink business. Like it's like, holy shit, there's an on the ground business that I'm investing in. I have a founder who is banging the drum on what he's up to. Like there will be money for that. It has to feel a little bit different from the areas that people have lost money in. You need something that makes it people think this is actually something totally different, and it's not like muscle memory of losing money. And I think that REKT has that. Like it has a totally new concept. So it makes sense that that's working because there is enormous amounts of liquidity out there. Like people have been making tons of money in the majors and want to turbocharge that P&L while not triggering their PTSD from losses they had in prior cycles.
I'm going to change tack a little bit here and talk about what you said at the start, because I know you have like a more professional TradFi style background as well. You obviously speak to a lot of people who are probably, they have their one eye on crypto and the one eye on what they're currently doing. How many of those people are now speaking to you about crypto, and what are they asking about? Is it just ETH, or are they delving into like some of the DeFi stuff or stable coins? What are you getting asked about?
I like these questions because I think the anecdotes are interesting. I think sometimes as people who are active on X, we blow up. Holy shit! Someone like a 70-year-old just asked me about Solana, and I think those anecdotes only have limited.
I agree with that.
But the stuff I hear, yeah, like my friends in finance asking about Ethereum, people who are worried about excessive money printing and extremely loose U.S. government policy, like who hated Bitcoin, talking about Bitcoin. I did have a 65-year-old guy say he bought Solana because he was tired of people telling him he should. Just last night.
Really?
Yeah, just last night. I went to a dinner. This is a guy I met at a dinner about psychedelics. So take that for what it's worth. But he very successful finance guy, though. Very successful finance guy. Was now really into psychedelics. But he said he started buying Solana. So you hear it more and more. I think the idea, I'm much more comfortable telling people that they need to own Bitcoin, whereas it used to feel like a contentious thing. Now I feel like it's something people agree on, even if they're not involved themselves. Like the narrative, I think, is really quite simple, that you have a government that really wants Bitcoin to go higher. You have a government that's about to get extremely loose monetary policy with a new Fed chair coming in. You have a president that wants nothing more than for interest rates to be zero. He'll hide inflation if he has to make it happen. And he'll pick his own Fed chair who will do whatever he says. Like there are a lot of reasons right now. I think that Bitcoin feels like a great asset. So I think like that narrative is getting bigger. No one asking about DeFi. Like I haven't heard a single person who outside the space talking about how you make money kind of as an LP on Uniswap or, but DeFi means different things to different people.
I ask these questions quite simply because we've just got, my personal view is that, and I continue to think this, is that crypto Twitter is just kind of looking in the wrong places often. And the people who've really made money over the last couple of years have been TradFi that got into Bitcoin, and now TradFi is getting into ETH, and like, or just like mainstream that's getting into these things. We're still, dancing around with meme coins often in terms of like what you see on crypto Twitter, and you miss the sheer amount of wealth that's been made. Like the crypto market cap went to 4 trillion, right? Like it's from 2-ish earlier this year, at one point earlier this year. And I feel as though that has left behind a lot of people. So that's why I like to ask, like, what are the people who are coming in now to crypto wanting to buy? And I do think ETH is just, it will keep going because of this. That's the main thing that people are looking at. I think Bitcoin will probably keep going too. I've seen obviously XRP gets mentioned. Link, I bought Link over the last few weeks as like a more of a normie, let's say, or like outside of crypto play. I think people are buying, but I'm definitely going to pay attention to more to that. Let me put it that way. It does feel as though people who are now peripherally looking at crypto, those are the things that are going to drive. I don't think they're going to come in and buy any meme coin. It feels like that trade is kind of, it will come back in a year. And NFTs, Raoul's done a good job at trying to onboard people to the NFT art trade. So maybe we're going to start to see some money flow back into that sort of stuff. But I do still think it's like stick to the majors, and it's tough to go wrong.
It's just, what is the cycle here? Like, or what is the fundamental trend? Is it that, I think there was a time where the fundamental trend was that my golf caddy was getting a Robinhood account, and you had all these like 25 to 35-year-old men who are like hearing about their friends making money and wanted to get involved in the gambling. Or whereas the past few years, it feels much more like Donald Trump's talking a lot about Bitcoin. We got David Sachs with a pretty serious role there. Lutnick clearly is a big bag holder and he's making big decisions. Like, kind of got to be involved. More and more investment banks building up crypto teams. Okay, like when that's the trend, yeah, you do not want to be involved in shitcoins. You want to be involved in the stuff that those guys are buying and that are part of these big macro trends. And I think like that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, increasingly Solana. Like, and what I wonder about, because I've, is there a time where NFTs start getting that attention again, where the idea of digital art as like a future kind of collectible asset class gets on the radar screen? And I've heard numbers that, you had 8 figures of dollars kind of in treasury companies that did want to buy punks. And it's just a matter of time. Like, if that's true, do NFTs kind of become a new entrant into that market? But I think it becomes harder to try to go double down on WIF or on FWOG or some of the stuff that is much more niche, much more kind of embedded in crypto culture. Aside from the fact that rising tides clearly lift all ships.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you in the chats that you're in? Because I know you're in chats with very, very smart traders that they're farming at the moment. Is it abstract? And abstract's got quite a lot of interest more recently. Is there anything else you think that people should be looking at?
I told you this earlier. This summer I have not been as deep in the trenches. I've been much less active in Twitter. Stuff I notice is, abstract is a good point. Like, abstract just pops up a lot. Like,
yeah,
it feels like, obviously ICO Beast is always an interesting guy to follow, because I think there are a few people who have their pulse on how do you make money day in, day out passively. Like, I feel like Polkadot comes up a lot with a lot of these guys. Like, they're still in the Kaido game for farming. Obviously Monad right now feels like it has a new resurgence, but that's only because they recently released their cards. Mega ETH is one that a couple guys I'm friends with and who seem to do a good job making money have put big bets on. Legendary Gains is a good friend.
Legendary. Yeah, he's done well.
He's thrown a lot of money. Well, he's done well, but that hasn't he hasn't got the liquidity yet there, right? So it's like, is this Mega ETH thing going to turn into a thing? Those are just a few of the things that I'd say I'm about as passive in kind of the trenches as I've been in the past couple of years, but just being a passive observer, those are some of the things that pop up.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think the ones that I see the most are probably Mega ETH and Abstract. Interestingly, both ETH adjacent, I would say. And Abstract's the one that really feels like it's gaining some momentum. Like, I see people trading even meme coins now over there, and I see people trading NFT projects, and they've just got quite a lot of momentum behind various different things they're doing because of Pengu. So
I think that Luca really is a genius. And when I say genius, it's like, who has just very special finger on the pulse of what actually drives these markets. And I think no one gets that better than Luca. No one understands the levers of this market better. No one is better at keeping attention on what he is doing in the way he is, at staying consistently relevant over long periods of time. Like, he really is fantastic at what he does. And he also hires very good people who can build good products. And I think Abstract is just, over time, it's just grinding higher and higher when it comes to the amount of attention it gets. So, I think he's really kind of a special talent when it comes to the game we're playing here.
Yeah, he's one of the few people in crypto that overpromises and manages to deliver, I tend to find. Do you know what I mean? Like, he definitely backs up the statements that he makes. Normally that's risky. That's a risky move in crypto when you do that sort of stuff. People come for you. But
You're telling someone who worked for Kevin Rose that, so say no more.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably what you've been caught up with too much in crypto. It feels like you need a leader who's going to if they're going to go that strategy, it's bloody risky.
Well, it is hard because this game's all about hype, and you have to be able to deliver hype. But then hype over time decays trust if you don't deliver. So yeah, I think there you have someone who both is incredible at the hype game and is incredible at just continuing to feed big events, big news stories, understanding what's going to make prices move, and he kind of doesn't.
Okay, maybe we'll move to some live questions because we have questions normally from the audience at this stage. If you have any questions, please put them in now. I'm going to be talking through a few of them. We have one from Dan Anderson. When, if at all, do you plan, any of you in the chat plan on taking profit this cycle? Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, Sui. Do you look at things like that? Do you think about where, like, levels you would take off your ETH, for example?
I own most of my. I bought 3 Bitcoin in 2013 and haven't sold them since. Like I think that this trend. I guess a time I might do it is if. It's hard not to want to do it with Donald Trump as president. It is. I think he really wants Bitcoin prices to go higher. I think he feels like the people who helped him get where he is are people who want Bitcoin to go higher. And I think he's surrounded by people who believe in it. And I think he really believes in loose monetary policy. And I don't think the dollar's kind of strength is something that matters that much to him. If we were to get a reverse in those trends, I don't know. Bitcoin's on such a multi-year bull market. I have a hard time knowing when you'd want to take profits. And I think that tugs ETH along with it. So I don't know. Those are my biggest holdings are Bitcoin, ETH, and punks. And I got no interest right now in kind of thinking about when I want to take the positions off. But I'm a boomer, I'm 43 years old.
Yeah, I had taken off some of my ETH and put it into Bitcoin. And then this week, I basically took that Bitcoin and bought Link with it. So I'm kind of those 3 on my 3 because I just feel like I just like them at this stage, alongside obviously similar to you, like summaries, which were like incredible. I remember for proof. I remember you came to me in the early days of it, and you were like, "Oh, how is this going to be?" And I was like, if you can continue to do this for a year, I'd be very, very, very impressed. And then I think it was about a year, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm done doing this."
Well, here's what happened. I did it for a full year, and I would have loved to keep going, but Kevin fired half our team. And that day he came to me. It's like, I just fired half the team, and I need you to take on a wider role at the company, and that probably means sunsetting the show. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to keep doing the show if the CEO of the company says this is like that simply running the show is going to get me on the next block. So I had to start thinking about my own longevity at the company. And in the end, it didn't matter because we sold to Yuga 3 months later. But like, I did not stop because I wanted to stop. I stopped because the person who was paying my paycheck, told me that he didn't value it.
Do it again. I'll get you. I'll sponsor you for sure. That's what everyone that I like in the space. I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's get out there. So, but yeah, that's obviously another airdrop. I think people are getting more excited to as well. Francisco Munoz, I think I'm saying that right. Can you discuss Bitcoin and Bored Elon? Now, Bitcoin is an abstract meme coin. I'm pretty sure. So I have not seen the price of it today, though somebody did say, "Whoa, Bitcoin" in one of the chats I'm in. So clearly it's moving quite a lot. I think in general, there is something, wow, it's at 20 million. It's called Bitcoin, Bigcoin. It's probably one of the most popular meme coins on abstract. But I'm not going to talk about individual coins, particularly not individual meme coins at $20 million. But what I would say is that there are incentives for obviously points for doing different things in abstract, and they have expanded it to certain meme coins. So I think you get incentives for either holding meme coins or being one of the early buyers. I'm not sure exactly how the points work, but there's definitely incentives right now for meme coins and abstract. So it's having this sort of resurgence, let's say, of meme coins just in that one place, because abstract's going to have an upcoming TGE at some point, maybe Q4 or Q1 next year. And there's money flowing into abstract right now. So if I were to look for 100x gains, like I really need to turn, $100 into $10,000, then I would be looking on abstract meme coins right now. So Bitcoin might be up there. I'm sure you have people in the chat who are involved in abstract meme, in your chats, who are involved in abstract meme coins stats.
Yeah, I feel like you got to get Tyler on the show for these questions. Like anything goes to $20 million. He's
there.
Got opinion. Can you talk about parentheses my bag and parentheses like tough question for me as someone who's mainly just in the majors and kind of focus on company level stuff more than the meme coins right now. So I like it. It is being discussed in my chat, but when I look at my Telegram, I see 587 messages you haven't read, 67 messages. That's just kind of the state I'm in right now in the trenches. And I apologize to you in the audience that I'm not quite as into the trenches right now.
No, Tyler did it, by the way. Another good follow. I think we're in many similar sort of chats of people that to follow. They're often news-based accounts as well. Okay, final question here is, will we see a meaningful strategic reserve during Trump's term? Personally, I think we kind of already have, but my view, just from the recent comments and actually consistent comments from Besson and the rest of the administration, is that they're not interested in buying Bitcoin. They're looking at basically taking over confiscated Bitcoin or looking at budget neutral ways of owning it, of which the only real way I can see is partnering with miners. What do you think about all this? I don't know. They must have is it over $10 billion they have right now in Bitcoin with confiscated amounts? So is there even a path to get like $50 billion of Bitcoin for the US, you think?
I remember in the early days, we were really focused on how much Bitcoin the government would buy. This whole budget neutral thing doesn't make sense to me because any revenue for the government is like can pay off the deficit. It's not like there to buy Bitcoin. It's like
Right.
It's like if I pay 20 grand of taxes and you buy Bitcoin with it, is that budget neutral? No, it's like that's taking your revenue and putting it into Bitcoin as opposed to other things that, because the government's in massive debt that it could go to. So the whole concept of budget neutral to me doesn't make sense because any action that brings in money could go to anything, and moving that to Bitcoin is whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't followed this conversation as much. I think that what you're quoting is stuff that was being said all the way back in like April, from what I remember, when they were discussing what would happen. And I don't know if there's been tons of progress with that yet. I wouldn't be, again, I think that pretty much every big player in the government does want Bitcoin to go higher. So I wouldn't be surprised if you start to get some random tailwinds from them, especially if the market gets weak. Maybe you have a little bit of a put option there from that. But I think it was clear that if they say they're using taxpayer money to buy Bitcoin, there is a lot of backlash from that. And our timelines do nothing but love it. But I have a lot of timelines that are not in crypto, and they're saying you're using taxpayer money to buy Bitcoin. And to the majority of people, that feels corrupt. It feels like you are using money to buy someone who you like or know or are related to's bag. And every now and then, the administration can be sensitive to that. So I think from our perspective, it's just diversification of assets. We own a lot of dollars, we own a lot of gold. You should own some Bitcoin too. But there is a backlash, not just in like the liberal wings, but also in a lot of the tech guys who are big into tech and not that big into crypto, and who are very impactful in the rise of Trump. So it's something that our community doesn't see very much, but I do, just because I live in a place where there's a lot of wealth, and most people don't have Bitcoin, and like are forwarding me how corrupt and ridiculous, like when that type of stuff happens. So I think that's just the side they have to balance.
I think that's very fair. I think I also kind of, because I think there could be a backlash if that sort of stuff happens. I've always thought it'd be politically unfeasible to do like, we're going to print money to buy Bitcoin, or we're going to use the tariffs to buy Bitcoin. Like those sort of things have seemed like pie in the sky sort of stuff. I don't think it's that bad either. Like, I don't know what happened to us that we want the government to own as much Bitcoin as possible, but it just seems kind of funny that like that's like one of the number one aims of crypto here is like, we want governments to own Bitcoin. It's like, I don't know. Like,
well, at the end of the day, we just want any incremental buyer. Like that is what everyone is here for, and maybe you get the occasional purist who mined Bitcoin in 2012 and cares about the vision more than the idea of number go up. But like, I think there is this idea that if Bitcoin replaces gold as an asset that all governments need to own, like we got way ahead of that trend. And that is and you can wrap it up in intellectual arguments for why it is something that's great. But I think at the end of the day, that's just like a massive, massive boon for the price. U.S. government buys it, then EU feels the need to buy it, then China feels the need to buy it, and then we were the guys that got in 2025 when you could still get in at 110,000. And I think that that's just like such a dream scenario that people here are going to relentlessly push for it. And right now, you have an administration that's actually going to listen, because like the Bitcoin lobby has been so incredibly strong in forming the government we have right now.
I think that's it then. I think this is a really good conversation. We touched upon a lot of different things across macro, NFTs, Bitcoin reserves. Who knows it? Well, we'd love to have you back on the show, maybe at some point in the next few weeks. For all listeners, remember I said at the start of the show, go check out realvision.com/ready set connect. This is for the current promotion. You'll be able to see some content between me and OSF, as well as broader Real Vision content there. You can go follow Stats at Punk9059 on X. That's where you mainly are. Do you still have a newsletter of any sorts, or really?
Not right now. Right now, I'm just at Punk9059 on X, and even with me being slow, I still probably post like 3 times a day. So
you post.
Yeah, I've gone from like 15 times a day to 3 times a day.
Okay, well, we'll definitely have you back on. I'll be back on next week as usual. I think we're going to have another potential guest co-host come in. So we'll see you next Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. British summertime. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
So here we are, Token 2049. It really is one of the most energetic, incredible events. Speakers from all around the world and visitors from every country you can ever imagine, all trying to learn something together, something new, this exciting world of crypto and technology. It's where you go and make friends, lifelong friends. And what's so nice is to see people with big smiles on their faces, happy to be here and happy to be together. So hopefully see you next time in Singapore. Real Vision will be there. I look forward to seeing you all.